Hello, today I'm here with our first citizen activist exposing police corruption and no friend of Brian Harvey. His name is Ian Puddick.
Brian who?
We will be talking about the Brian Harvey situation towards the end of this to try and clear it up. And you've got a website called www.policeexpenses.co.uk.
Yeah, policeexpenses.co.uk.
What brought that about?
Okay, how long have you got? I'll give you a very brief overview. And then
2 hours. Take your time.
Okay. So it all starts off with a domestic affair. Literally, I found out that my wife had been having an affair with her boss, and I'll be as pragmatic as I possibly can. These things happen, and they always will. End of story. It's not an offence or a criminal offence. It's just one of life's things. So at the time, we decided that we were going to try and see if we could make it work. So I called her boss. Her boss was the chief exec of the world's largest reinsurance company. They insure it's actually reinsurance, so they insure the insurance companies. So I rang him up, and I'm not a tough guy or a violent man or anything like that. So no guns at all. And to be frank, this guy is no more the villain than her, if that makes sense. It's not, he's the bad guy and she's the poor innocent victim. It takes two to tango. So I rang him up with a view to asking if she could be moved. She was his secretary. He told me to F off and said it was none of my business and put the phone down. So the next day, I rang up the chairman of the company, a guy called Nick Frankland, who was really nice. And I said, I'm not causing any trouble. Explain the circumstances. And I accepted that they were difficult circumstances. And I said, look, we're going to see if we can make it work. Is it possible for my wife to be moved? I'm not saying, she's got to be moved this second. A global organisation, it's going to take time. It might take 6 months. But, if she's moved at some point, we've got a chance of trying to make it work. And do you know what? He was really nice. He was fantastic. And she was moved the next day. And that really should be, by Shaun, that's the end of the story. But unfortunately, it's not. So the chap concerned, and I don't mention his name, and there's a really specific reason for not mentioning. There's no legal limitations on mentioning his name. I've never, ever mentioned his name if you look at any of the posts, anything I've ever written, because the minute I say, this guy, Joe Blogs, it becomes about Joe Blogs, and it'll be perceived by the audience. This guy's I'm just trying to get at Joe Blogs. This isn't about Joe Blogs. He's involved, but he's not, as the story unfolds, it's not really about him. So anyway, the guy, Joe Blogs, was obviously embarrassed because the chairman of the company had obviously approached him and said, look, we're moving your secretary. So he reported me. He went to his local police force down in Sussex and reported me for harassment. Harassment needs a minimum of 2 actions. 1 for calling him, which obviously I did, and 2 for calling his boss, Nick Frankland. So there's no dispute that happened. So the local police force said it was a civil matter. And the sergeant in his notes at Sussex Police said it was a civil matter, that my behaviour was reasonable in the circumstances, and they would not be taking it any further. So the guy was obviously very, very embarrassed and went to a company. This is where it all unfolds. This is where it all explodes and goes nuts. The chap concerned, then goes to a company called Kroll of the world's largest private detective force, a security agency. The insurance company that he worked for owned Kroll. They're part of the same group, and they're in the same building on another floor. And there's an email chain from the managing director of Kroll, a guy called Benedict Hamilton. And Benedict Hamilton confirms in writing that he's spoken to Sussex Police and he's pushed them. And these are internal Kroll emails that I obtained and I used at my trial, which we'll get to. The Kroll emails confirm that they've spoken to Sussex Police, and Sussex Police are not moving on this. This is a civil matter. We're not getting involved. However, he's spoken to City of London Police, and it mentions Detective Chief Superintendent Jeff Chandler and Detective Chief Superintendent Steve Davis. And they have confirmed that they will use, this is what it says in the internal email, considerable resources against me, including the use of deploying counter-terrorism. So So we've got one police force saying, look, we're not moving. It's a civil matter. The bloke just asked for his wife to be moved. And we've got counter-terrorism and, as the police force said, considerable resources. And trust me, as we go through it, you'll see that there were considerable resources. So the first thing that happened was a week later, Elena was arrested and quizzed by City of London police. And I get a phone call at 4:00 in the afternoon from Lena, sobbing and completely incoherent. I've just been arrested. She couldn't speak. And I go, what for? Who, why, what happened? And they accused her of conspiring to pervert the course of justice, a fairly significant crime under British law. And what they'd put to her was that Lena and I had lied. We were in a conspiracy and we had invented the affair. They didn't mention blackmail, but they insinuated that the two of us were conspiring, creating the affair to get to this guy. They didn't say how, and they tried to force a confession out of her. And she said, look, no, we're not in, she confirmed the whole affair in the interview, what had happened, how long it had been going for, and etc. They were having none of it. They were there for one objective, to get her to say, yeah, we made it up.
Have you got the footage of that?
Sorry, no. Well, we'll get to that. We'll get to that because there's no record. There's no record of that interview. So if you did a freedom of information request and say, was Lena quizzed by City of London police on this date? Who were the officers and what was the nature of the interview? There is no record. They would just say, I don't know what you're talking about.
And this was counter-terrorism?
This is counter-terrorism from City of London police.
Are they just looking for people to strike? To use to create work for themselves?
Well, you make as the story unfolds. I'll let you make a judgment on sort of their real objectives. So I said to Elena, look, when you go, go back to the office now, because I said, who interviewed you? What were the names? The officer, I can't remember. She was she's all crying. She was crying. So she went down to the reception of the company to see the names who'd signed in. They hadn't signed in. So I said to her, look, just go back and email the chief exec of the company, HR, and just say two police officers, police officers have walked in here into the office. I've been accused of all of these things. I want to know who authorised it and on what grounds. And they basically didn't reply to her in writing. The HR department came and literally spoke to her face to face and said, look, the police officers turn up. Who are we to impede them in their duty? We don't know anything about it. So really sorry. So she made a bit of a fuss about that. At a later date, as we got closer to my trial, which I'll obviously enlarge on, as we get disclosure from the Crown Prosecution Service, we got the internal Kroll emails that state that Ian Fatt, the head of security for Kroll Private Security, contacted City of London Police and he arranged for Elena to be arrested. So you've got the police going, look, we're public servants, you fund us, we haven't got a clue what's going on, we don't know about the interview. But the Kroll emails show that they were able to orchestrate that.
What did he say to incite the police to act?
Well, I would imagine the emails just state that he organised it. What did he say? Obviously, we're not privy to that.
Okay.
But it's revolving doors because loads of these City of London police officers in general, when they hit a certain rank and position with their experience, go to work for these companies. Revolving doors. It's big money. There's all these what you say cosy relationships, and again, it's the lack of accountability in all of these things. So, I wasn't best pleased that she'd been arrested. 2 weeks later, my house is raided by. I've got no criminal history. I've never been arrested before. Apart from parking fines, I'm clean. So a week and a half later, my company, I run a leak detection company. I always say plumbing company. We don't do plumbing. We've got special machinery for finding hidden water leaks, gas leaks. We've got machines. That's what we do. Got engineers doing that. So my office is raided by the Counter-Terrorism Directorate. I'm arrested at 6:30 in the morning. It's the most terrifying experience. Opening the door, bang, 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 6:30 in the morning. They're all there, counter-terrorism. I thought they had the wrong house. I did remember thinking they had the wrong house. And then when he went, Ian Puddick, blah, 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 I thought, oh, come on, So they come in and they rush in. my office is raided at sort of 8 o'clock in the morning, and my company accountants, who've just got absolutely nothing to do with this at all, they're raided by the Major Crimes Directorate. And the whole of this, all these various raids, it's called, it comes under the umbrella of Operation Bohan. So we did, with some help from some very senior, helpful police officers from other forces. They estimated that the whole of this operation, not just on this day, but the ongoing investigation, was about £1.5 million. It went on.
Whoa.
It went on for a year and a half.
Just to help their buddies out at Kroll.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just favours. And what I always say to people is if my wife had an affair with the milkman and I'd called the dairy, we wouldn't be in the studio. And and it's the lack of accountability. It's not that people misbehave. People always misbehave. But it's the lack of accountability, and they are public servants and we pay their wages. So that's the real issue. I have to say, on the initial raid, the police officers were extremely nice. I think they felt sorry for me. I was really frightened.
Were they worried? Were they wondering what they were doing there?
Well, they were really nice. I had to explain it to them.
They didn't really find
know.
any explosives.
Yeah, they didn't really know. I had to explain what had happened, and they were really nice. You know, I remember saying to Sergeant Colin Dawson on the raid, you know, I rung and asked for my wife to be moved. You know, if I rang up and said, right, you're dead meat and I'm going to come and get you and all that kind of stuff, then fair enough. But I haven't said anything like that. And to be fair, the guy concerned didn't say I'd made those, didn't. And I said, what would you done? He'd go, it'd be effing dead. And I thought, I'm being raided. I mean, you couldn't make it up. I mean, there are humans at the end of the day. But the police officers at the time were really nice. And it all got sinister, really. So I'm arrested. I declined. Biggest mistake I ever make. Biggest mistake. I declined a solicitor. I thought, you know, if you're really honest and you just tell the truth, it's all going to be okay. I look at the camera. I look at the police. Please don't ever do that. Don't ever do that. You know, say nothing or get an independent lawyer. Do not. Just don't speak to the police.
Plead the fifth.
Plead the fifth. And it really is, because the story as it unfolds, we're going to get into crack cocaine and all sorts of things. So I'm released. I'm arrested. I obviously tell the police exactly what happened. No solicitor present, so no one guarding me. Say this. So I just thought I could explain.
What charges have you got for the arrest warrant?
So the charge is a really simple charge. It's Section 2 non-violent harassment, which is so you've got 1, 2, 3. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 5, like, you know, with menaces. I'm going to beat you up and duff you. 2 is down there. And it's specifically noted as non-violent, and it was basically I'd made those phone calls, which obviously I had made. We've got one police force saying it's a civil matter. We've got the counter-terrorism now, just with everything they've done.
So how can counter-terrorism go out and raid someone if the charge is not that serious like that?
Well, that's the whole point.
They couldn't file a more serious charge.
Well, they tried.
What was the most serious charge they tried to file?
The most. For me personally, oh God, I've been arrested for so many things.
All revolving around this.
All pertaining to this. So.
All right, just keep going. What was next?
So then I'm released. I then have to wait to find out. I'm on police bail. I was trying. Are we all right for time? Yeah. So I'll tell you about my first court hearing. So my first ever court hearing. So it's not just the first court hearing pertaining to my first ever court hearing. So I walk into. I'm charged with Section 2 non-violent harassment for making these calls. So I go to my first court hearing, and we turn up at court. And I've got these police bail conditions, or areas I can't go. Obviously, I can't contact Mr. So-and-so. Well, that's fair enough. But they're really, really severe bail conditions. So we turn up at court, and I'm defending myself because I just thought I don't need to pay a solicitor to this. I'll look at the magistrates, and common sense will prevail. So the first court hearing, they can't hear the hearing. They can't. It can't take place because the actual documents, the court documents, were mislaid. So they had to adjourn it. So the senior magistrate turns around and says, "Really sorry, they're not here. We're going to have to adjourn it. Are there any bail conditions?" And they had a detective there again from the counter-terrorism directorate, and he said, "Yes, there are." So he said, "Do you have copies?" And the policeman handed them over, and they went through them. And the magistrate looked at the bail conditions. He said, "Well, these are quite stringent. These are quite severe. Can you tell me what Mr. Puddick's alleged to have done?" So the policeman said, and he said, "Well, why have we got all these bail conditions?" So he said, "Well, we don't know how Mr. Puddick's going to behave, so there could be a continued course of conduct." So he said to the police officer, "I want a yes or no. Have there been any threats of violence? I'd like a yes or no." So the policeman said no. So he said, "Well, why can't Mr. Puddick go into these postcodes? Why can't he go here? Why can't he do this? Why is he not allowed to post anything on the internet?" He said to the police officer, "How are you going to enforce all these bail conditions? How are you going to enforce them?" So the policeman said, "Well, we will." He said, "So if Mr. Puddick goes on the internet, he's liable for arrest. How are you going to stop him from going on the internet?" He goes, "Well, we've told him he's not allowed to go on the internet." He said, "And do you think that's fair and reasonable?" And the policeman obviously said yes. So he said, "Well, this is nonsense." He said, "I'm not having bail conditions in my court that aren't reasonable, that can't be enforced, because they're meaningless." So he removed all the bail conditions and just said, "Mr. Puddick, I don't know what's going on here." He said, "I wish you well." He said, "But we have to adjourn it until the court documents are here. And the only bail conditions are that you don't contact Mr. So-and-so." And I said, "Yeah, that's fine." So as we walked out, the policeman called me I'm not going to swear, the W word. So I said, so I said to him, "It didn't go well for you, did it?" And then I won't tell you what he said. He called me an effing so-and-so. I mean, they're just bad sports. They're bad sports. But to be fair to the policeman, he didn't lie. He didn't say, "Yeah, there was all violence," when there wasn't, because I was expecting him to. I was really expecting him to. So I then have to go back to Snow Hill Police Station in the City of London. That's where I'm brutalised in custody. So Colin Dawson, who'd been on the initial raid, who'd been exceptionally nice, and Sergeant Ellis take me through to a small interview room, like the size of this room divided by 4. So it's really small. I'm a big guy. We're all in this room about this size. And there's one chair, and like a stool, and it's cemented to the floor. So we're in this room. So Sergeant Ellis starts saying, "Found some interesting things searching your house, Mr. Puddick. And this is not recorded. This interview is not recorded. Very interesting things. Do you want to tell us what we might have found?" So I said, "I don't know. I really don't know." So he said, "Well, I'm giving you an opportunity now. This is your opportunity to come clean." And I said, "Well, I told you guys absolutely everything when I was arrested and interviewed, and I did. I really did." And he went, "But we want to discuss the things that we found in your house." So I said, "Like what?" He goes, "You tell us." I said, "But I don't know. I really don't know. There's nothing in my house that's bad." So he said, "All right, well, let me help you out. Why did I find a photograph of you taking cocaine?" So I went, whoa. I genuinely have never taken cocaine or any of those or any drugs. I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness. I mean, that doesn't count for anything. But
you were a minister at one point, weren't you?
I was a Jehovah's Witness minister.
Wow.
So I just said, "That's nonsense." I said, "I've never taken any illegal drugs ever. I've never smoked a cigarette. I've got no interest in it. Just have no interest in that whatsoever." So I'd like to see this photograph. So he said, I'm trying not to swear. He said, "Don't effing get cocky with me." And I said, "I'm not." I said, "No, I want to see this picture. You effing calling me a lie." And he started getting angrier and angrier and angrier. I said, "No, I want to see a picture." Because if you've got a picture and I go, "Oh, it's a misunderstanding. I was doing this and it looked like that." There is no picture. It doesn't exist. And he was trying to force me by shouting and swearing in my face. So he really loses it. Colin Dawson's going, Sarge. I said, and I'm in the corner, and he's like now in my face, shouting and swearing. All I can smell is his tobacco cigarette breath in my face. And he's going, "You effing lying," he's using the C word. And I said, "You can shout at me as much as you want. I've never taken drugs. I want to see the picture." So he said, you think you're funny, dear? You think you're funny? I went, no, I want to see the picture. And well, I haven't got it. I said, well, I'll wait. You can get it. He said, and then he went off again. He started screaming and stuff. And it was like a charade, really. But I felt very intimidated. I felt very, very, very intimidated. So then he said, another thing, we found on your computer, because when they raided my house, they took away my laptop, my sat-nav, a Sony digital camera, and an iPad. So and my phone. So he said, on your laptop, we found a photograph of you with lots of drugs. And I said, it's just impossible. It's just never happened. It's absolutely impossible. I'd like to see that picture. Well, what's it doing on your laptop? And the picture doesn't exist. So it's, go and get it. Let me see it. Let me see it. And if there's a picture of me, then there's me busted, isn't it? Oh, it's nonsense. Absolutely nonsense. And I'm thinking, what can he be talking about? What can he talk about? So I said, well, what was in the picture? And he said, you're in it. I said, and he said, you had a wheelbarrow of drugs. And when he said that, I said, you're joking. That's not even me in the picture. And what it was, in 2000, I'll get Andrew Riley, if you're watching, please forgive me. I was the best man at Andrew Riley's wedding, a good friend of mine. 2005, 2006. I had to do the best man speech. So rather than get up and stand up and say terrible things about my friend Andrew and embarrass him, I did a PowerPoint presentation called The Life of Riley, and I had photographs of Andrew throughout the whole of his sort of child and adult life. And I got a friend to doctor the pictures. And I showed him go through a gay stage with all in leathers and all sorts of weird. And I'm saying, Danielle, did you know? And there's a picture of him there in a gay club. It's just fun. Everyone's laughing. That was the whole purpose. And then I found a picture of and sorry if anyone is offended by this, the BBC Two gardener, a guy called Monty Don, who's been around for like forever. And I found a photograph online of Monty Don with like a wheelbarrow with all plants and bits and pieces in there. And my friend photoshopped and put Andrew Riley's face over Monty Don's, quite badly, by the way, quite badly. And then all of the wheelbarrow of plants was all gold sovereigns and cash and drugs and stuff. And it was just a picture for and it's Andrew Riley's face. And I'm trying to explain to Sergeant Ellis. I said, that's not me in the picture, it's Andrew Riley. Well, what's he doing with the drugs? And I'm trying to explain it. He's going mad at me. And then he just loses it. And he gets me up in the corner, and that's when I just thought, God, if I push him off, there was a camera up in the top left-hander. If I push him off, anybody that knows me knows I'm not violent. We had that joke before we started. If you and me are going to have a fight, Shaun, you better have better trainers because you're going to have to catch me. I'm not a tough guy. I don't pretend to be. I've never, ever pretended to be. It's not in my nature. I'm a big wimp. And I just knew it would be, if I pushed him off me, it would have been portrayed that there had been an assault on a police officer. And I just clammed up, really. I just thought whatever they can do, I'll just.
He tried to provoke it, didn't he?
Yeah. So he just, I came out and I was really overwhelmed. And it's only as I walked out the police station, I actually started crying. I was actually a bit frightened. As I said, as adults, we don't, I'm fairly confident. You don't feel fear. You might feel a bit unsure. You might feel a bit nervous. You might feel a bit uneasy. But actually feeling fear, it's the first time as an adult in many years I actually felt frightened. And I was frightened, but it's like the school, it's like the school bully. They're public servants. We pay their wages. And I'm in all this trouble for nothing, for absolutely nothing. So I just thought, do you know what? I'm not going to let these people get away with this. I don't care who they are. They've got money and resources. Well, I can embarrass them. No one wants to be embarrassed. I can embarrass them, and that's exactly what I did. So, the charge against me for harassing Joe Bloggs, this chap, was dropped. So I'm thinking, hey, I've been brutalised in custody. Lena's been arrested for conspiracy to pervert the course of justice for making up the affair, and the police are doing this. This shouldn't happen. I didn't believe things like this happened in this country. Obviously, my eyes have been opened since. And I'd speak at demonstrations and things publicly. And if you think my case is bad, there's cases far worse than mine. Far, far worse than mine. Far, far worse than mine. Mine's a walk in the park compared to some of them. And so I created the website policeexpenses.co.uk, and what it does is it just details the whole of the police operation against me, information I've got from Freedom of Information, which is obviously they reluctantly give you information, but most of it came from information that I got from the Crown Prosecution Service, all the Kroll emails. And it was Kroll that were driving all of this. The Kroll was sending the emails to the police. We think we need to look at this. We think we need to do that. And then the police were just doing it. So in the end, the guy concerned that was involved with the affair, he lost his job. Now, he'd been a board member of the reinsurance company. The reinsurance company is called Guy Carpenter Limited. He lost his job. They'd been there for 32 years. The case against me is dropped. I'm a free man. So I create the website Police Expenses about two and a half months after he'd lost his job and the case against me had been dropped. And then I get arrested again. So the police come and raid my house again.
Was it the terrorism police?
Yeah, they was murder squad. It was
which?
Yeah, murder squad. City of London Police murder squad.
Murder squad.
Yeah. So this time it was led by
murder squad.
It was Sergeant Sarah Mayo, and what they alleged. You need to be a magician. The charge against me was exactly the same. Section 2 non-violent harassment, creating and publicising a harassing blog. So my website, policeexpenses.co.uk, they say, which was created in May 2010, they said that my website created in May 2010 had caused him to resign and lose his job in February 2010. Now, you need to make that charge stick. And they ran with it. They ran with it. That's all they had. So they tell
us they don't have the resources to arrest all these paedophiles, and they're raiding you for silly shit.
And they're raiding my company accountants. They're raiding my office. They took all our servers away. They took all our computers away from our office for forensic analysis. And the problem for my leak detection business for 6 months were customers were ringing up saying, "Oh, hi, you did a quote for me 6 weeks ago. We'd like to go ahead." So everything had gone. The backup, everything had been taken. So, you can't turn around and say, "I'm really sorry about that. We've just been raided by the terrorism police, so we don't have a copy of your quote." So we literally would have to say, "Oh, system's down at the moment. Could you re-email us a copy of it, please?" So the customers for 6 months would have to email us copies. Go, "Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, that's still valid. We can do this and we can do that." So they really disrupted my business. So I was so furious. I can't tell you how angry I was at the police, because you could argue that the private security company was driving this, but the police are public servants paid by us. They're meant to investigate crime without fear and favour and all this kind of stuff. It's all complete nonsense, by the way. I mean, to be fair, are all police forces like City of London Police in Operation Bowhand? The answer is no. But they're like any organisation. They close ranks and look after one another.
I think there's a lot of good people in the police.
Yeah, I got helped by lots of police
and
officers.
they're misdirected by people manipulating it from the top.
Yeah, it's always the senior police officer. So, for example, in all of my case, I became sort of obsessed with it. Really, I was going to win that case, whatever happens. Started investigating things. So I came across, nothing to do with me, nothing to do with my case. So this is about 20 years ago. There's a brilliant documentary that you'll never see because it's been banned. It's actually on my website, and I managed to get the license for it. It's 25 years ago. Sorry. And there was a program that used to be called World in Action, really old-fashioned, hard-hitting journalism, doorstepping people, really investigating. There's nothing really like that anymore. And they made a brilliant 1-hour special called Cleaning Up the Yard, i.e. cleaning up Scotland Yard. It's been banned. So I in there was a guy called. Oh gosh, his name's just gone. Tony Lundy, Detective Chief Superintendent Tony Lundy, and in there, the Scotland Yard found out that he was taking bribes from drug dealers, and I don't mean kids on the street. We're talking about the big guys at the top. So this back in the late 80s, early 90s. He was taking bribes of over 150,000 cash a year on top of his salary. And when they found out that he was doing that, what did the police do? The police pensioned him off early on an enhanced police pension, not the normal police pension, an enhanced police pension. Now, I'm being raided and brutalised in custody over nonsense, and you've got serious criminality at the top of Scotland Yard, and they cover it up. And that's the issue. It's the lack of accountability.
They can't admit to that because it's happening all over the world.
Yeah.
There's so much money in the war on drugs, and the drug laws have created it, that every profession is corrupted, and it's the police working with the traffickers, politicians working with traffickers. So to accept that he did that opens it up to the whole system being shown as corrupt, and they can't ever do that, and it just continues.
No, it's the culture. It's all about the culture.
Yeah.
And it's the culture at the top. And all of the, as the older people retire and move on and do whatever, and the younger ones, that culture stays there. The culture doesn't change because it's the older people teaching the younger generation, this is how we work, this is what we do, this is how we operate. And that culture remains, and it's the lack of accountability. And they take their reputation very seriously, and their reputation is more important than breaking the law.
So the murder squad raided you, and then you got this new charge. What happens with the new charge? You got to go to court.
So I go to court, and I do go to court. So this time, I literally, with my friend of mine, we literally and some friendly journalists, I'd managed to track down all of the police officers where they live that were involved in the first operation, and some of the officers that weren't particularly nice to me. So
when you say you managed to track down where they live, how do you go about that? And is that legal?
Well, from friendly journalists, yeah. From friendly, I don't know how to do it.
Okay.
But I know journalists are able to get addresses and things. Yeah.
Yeah. And what was the purpose of that?
So what I do is, if you're one of the officers, and this is a camera, we'd knock on your door and say, DC Shaun Attwood, Ian Puddick, you arrested me last week for blah blah blah. You spent over £1.5 million so far on the first operation. Not sure what it's costing so far. All over an affair. You're from the murder squad. Public would like to know what you're doing and why you're involved. And I'd film it and put it on YouTube. I did that.
So what's the legality of doing that, showing up at police people's houses?
Well, I didn't put the addresses on there. I didn't say where they live.
Yeah.
But I embarrassed them. And I even did that to Adrian Leppard, the Commissioner of City of London. He lives in a gated house down in Reigate. So we went down there on a Saturday morning, 7:30. We had to wait for the postman to come at 8:15. The gate opened. Me and my friend Dave knocked on the door. His wife answered. And I was, is Commissioner Leppard there, please? And she said, oh, Adrian. He came down in his white. And literally, I just was able to say, Ian Puddick, you know who I am. You authorised Operation Bohan. You spent millions investigating me, and you're continuing to do that. The public would like to know why. Wonder what you're going to say. And he just slammed the door in my face. I put it on YouTube. They come and arrest me. I was always polite, very respectful. You're wasting public money. Public would like to know why. Just wonder what you've got to say. And I did that to all of them, and they're not used to that.
Slow down. If, for example, if you shot up some prosecutor's house in America or something like that, you're going to probably get arrested, and there's going to be some serious charges.
They did arrest me. They arrested me all the time.
So what?
They arrest me all the time.
What law are you breaking? Showing up at a police person's house? What are they charging you with?
They never charged me. This is the point. They would arrest me, say that I was harassing the person. Now, if I knock on your door one day, Detective Sergeant Shaun Attwood, and say, Shaun Attwood, you did blah, 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 video you tell me to bog off, or you shut the door, and I put it on there and I never do it again, there is no charge. There is no charge. If I keep on doing it all the time, then there's a course of conduct, and then you're in trouble.
People watching this do not get ideas.
Do not.
We are not suggesting you do anything like this. Quite the reverse. This will just make your life hell.
Yeah, it will be awful.
But you will be locking horns with the people you can not possibly win because they have all the taxpayers' money in the world.
So what I learned, I was very, very naive in the beginning. I thought, I'm not going to surrender to all these idiots. I'm not going to allow them to intimidate me. So they would come in. I'd be in the cells. They would come in, different police officers working in this.
After you just filmed them at the house.
Yeah, no. These were all custody suites, police officers. The people I'm filming are much higher up the tree.
Top, yeah.
So they would come in with cups of tea and stuff like that, and then detectives would come down. Different detectives say, "Oh, Mr. Puddick," they'd come down with a clipboard and say, "Look, you're a reasonable guy. You're a nice guy. You shouldn't be in here. Look, if you sign these police bail conditions to remove it all, we can get you out straight away." And, whether there's going to be a charge, I don't know. I'd lost my fear of them at this point. They can charge me. I just didn't care. I'm really going to court for my website, which I very proudly created. So they would come down, and I'm not signing that. No, I'm not going to sign that. No. And then after about the 6th time of being arrested, I thought, what an idiot. Just sign it, ignore it. They've got no power over me. So they'd come down in the first hour. I'd sign the bail conditions, take down the website. Off you go, Mr. Puddick, you're free. And they just ignored them. And they never came after me for breach of bail. They never came back and said, hey, we're arresting you. You said you'd take it down. You never did. But what they kept doing was kept recharging me with reposting it. I'd never ever taken anything down. I wasn't going to take anything down. So I ended up with loads and loads of counts for the same thing, that by the time we got to court, the judge looked at it all. And when it was explained to the judge what it was about, he said, well, I'm just seeing this as one charge. So all these 13, 14 charges of reposting. Well, I'd never taken it down. It'd never been reposted. It's just there all the time from whenever it was put on.
And were you looking at some time in prison possibly from this charge?
The maximum was 6 months, because I was in a magistrate's court, not in a Crown court. You asked me earlier what the most serious charge was. Depends how you look at it. So they came one morning and arrested me. Didn't tell me what it was. It was Sergeant Sarah Mayo. She was as hard as nails. And John Clifford from the Major Economic Crimes Director. They're investigating bank fraud and big stuff. So they came and arrested me, took me in the car. Didn't say a word. I was talking to them. I'm quite chatty anyway, as you can probably tell. Got to the police station, got to the custody desk, emptied all my pockets. We're now at the desk, and I've got my wallet on there, my belt, and all my bits and pieces. And they open up my wallet, and Sergeant Mayo turns around and says, "Is this your credit card, Mr. Puddick?" And this is, for me, the most important arrest. It's not maybe the most significant arrest or the most serious arrest, but for me it was the most serious arrest, because it undermines your whole integrity. So if I said to you, I'll tell you what happened. So she gets out my company MasterCard, my Leakbusters Limited business credit card. Is this your credit card, Mr. Puddick? It says Leakbusters Limited on it, and my name. So I said, yeah, of course. I had no idea where it was going, by the way. So she puts it in an evidence bag. Oh, God. And she said, okay. They put me in the cells for about an hour, and then I still had no idea. And she says, right, we're taking you through to interview. I need to arrest you at this point and caution you. And she read me my rights. You can get a solicitor. And I said, no, that's fine. I don't need a solicitor. I just wasn't going to say anything. Just not going to speak to them. So she said, we're arresting you for Section 4 of the Fraud Act, credit card fraud. So if you don't hear the story in context, and you just hear that I've been arrested for credit card fraud, you think, well, no smoke without fire. And this is what I did. And what they accused me of doing, I did. And I've done it 100 times since. And it's not a crime, hence. So in my police interview, she says, my website, policeexpenses.co.uk, did you buy that domain name with your company credit card? I said, I honestly can't remember. And that's the truth, honestly. She pulls out all these documents to say that I'd bought the domain name online, I'd used that. And I said, if your documents say that, then I did. So I paid £11.60 for it. So what they tried to accuse me of, they said that I had stolen £11.60 from my own company. So in my police interview, I said, look, I appreciate, and I'm really not exaggerating. I said to them, I appreciate this is a massive heist at Leakbusters Limited, and you've pulled in Murder Squad and all these resources. I hate to think, and I can't thank you enough. And you found the culprit that stole £11.60 from my company. Can I not press charges against him? Because obviously I'm the victim. Someone stole £11.60 from my company. Oh no, it was me. You can't make this nonsense up. So she said, but why did you use that credit card? And I said, well, it's probably the only card that I had in my pocket when I did it. I really don't know. I haven't got a clue. For £11.60, it really doesn't matter. They said, but you have stolen £11.60 from... And I said, no, I haven't. So I said, how can I steal £11.60 from my company? If I had a credit card with £1,000 limit on it, just hypothetically speaking, a £1,000 limit on there, and I spend £700 on leak busters stuff, and I spend £300 on me buying, I don't know, some speakers or something personal, my accountant looks at my credit card bill. He looks at them and says, right, there's £700 there, leak busters, allocated leak busters, and then there's £300 worth of personal expenditure. He puts that into my personal account, and I pay tax on that. That's what my accountant is for. And John Clifford, from the major they're investigating banks and stuff, said to me, why'd you get an accountant to do that? I kid you not. This is a recorded interview. So I was thinking, oh wow, I can't wait to get a copy of this interview. And I have. It's online. You can hear it online. And all the things.
Can we put it here, a little bit of it, maybe?
We can find bits of it. Sarah Mayo says, "Oh, you're mocking us and stuff. You're mocking us." And obviously, I was, but it was so pathetic. So So Sarah Mayo said, "But why do you use an accountant?" I said, "Because it's a legal obligation. It's a legal obligation for an independent person to look at my accounts and represent the middleman and go to the tax authorities and say what your tax liabilities are." And Sarah Mayo says in the interview, "You seem like quite a resourceful guy. Why don't you do it?" And I said, "Because I'm not an accountant." Sarah, I'm not an accountant. I'm just not an accountant. And I have no interest in training to be an accountant. I said that. Anyway, they didn't charge me with that. But it was a day of my liberty wasted in police nonsense, having meaningless conversations. Like you say, there's paedophiles out there. There's some really, really serious things. But they have got the money. When the police say, we can't investigate, we haven't got the money, the police cuts. Trust me, when the police want to do something, they can do whatever they want. Whatever they want. And that's the issue. They're not truly accountable. So we get to, so that was, for me, I don't talk about that because you obviously give me the benefit of explaining the context of it all. But if I said, oh yeah, I was arrested for credit card fraud and move on to something else, you think, hang on, what did he do? Because stealing undermines everything, I think. If I'm stealing from you or stealing from someone or, just stealing at all, it undermines your whole integrity as far as I'm concerned. So I never really talk about that. But for me, that was the most personal. There was one, I was arrested in Muswell Hill. I was in my car, and this was by the Metropolitan Police. So I'm sat in bumper to bumper traffic, and you could hear the siren. And I thought it was an ambulance or something. And all of a sudden, the police car pulls right up next to me, gets out. "Are you Ian Puddick?" He then arrests me. And he handcuffs me to the steering wheel. And I said, "What are you doing that for?" And he was really nice. He was really polite. He said, "I really don't know, but we've been told to arrest you. I'm going to call in." Now they're not allowed to arrest you they're not allowed to handcuff you to a steering wheel, because if the car catches fire, you're toast. They can't run in and get you're toast. They're not allowed to. Obviously, that didn't happen, but they're not allowed to do that. Obviously, when I reported that later, obviously he denied it all as they would. And he didn't know why he was arresting me, and he came back and he was really apologetic. He was really nice. The police officer was very nice, and I explained to him. I said, "I'm going to court soon about all this stuff," and I explained it to him, and he went, "Good luck with all that." Good luck with all that. I wasn't charged again. I wasn't even arrested. I was just handcuffed, and then after about 15 minutes by the side of the road, he'd really taken the handcuff off and explained what was going on. He said it was for a stolen car, by the way. They said I'd stolen the car. I'd owned the car for 7 years. So it's not like I bought it last week, the paperwork, there's an issue. I'd owned the car for 7 years. So a stolen car was just, driving and being in possession of a stolen car was complete nonsense.
Right, open that door. Let's fresh showing. Thanks.
What else was I arrested for? Hate speech. So I was arrested. From my first arrests for creating the website, so that's happened in May 2010. My actual trial for creating the website was in June 2011. For that whole period, literally every Sunday, apart from when it rained, I wasn't very good at protesting in the rain, I went to Speaker's Corner. and I got a massive following. It's dwindled now, but at the time, Kevin Rudd, the Australian Prime Minister, followed me and sent me a private message saying, "If you're following your case, good luck."
You've got a lot of followers on Twitter and you're on YouTube.
Yeah, but it used to be more. It used to be much more. It used to be double. This is 2011, and I was campaigning. I was making videos. I was regularly posting videos. So after I was brutalised outside City of London Police, Snow Hill Police Station, I went straight back outside. Me standing outside the police station, just explaining what happened behind me. Sort of got 40, 50,000 hits quite quickly. Because it's, I'm not a criminal. They shouldn't be doing all this nonsense, and they shouldn't be getting away with it. They should be held to account. And the fact they're not held to account allows them to get away with it again and again. And other people in the police force that see it might not be part of any of this nonsense. Think, oh, well, if I'm in trouble, at least I know I'm not going to get in trouble. If I do something wrong, everyone's going to look after me. And that's how the system works, really, as I'm sure you're aware from, all your previous guests.
Kafka-esque.
It's very, very it's very, very Kafka. So I was arrested at Speaker's Corner. There was an this was mid 2010. There was an EDL rally, hot summer's day in by Speaker's Corner, just past Speaker's Corner at Hyde Park. And it turned out there was a big fight. Some people got hooted out and had a big fight. I'm standing. I don't shout and swear. I'm very polite and fairly respectful. And I just stand there and talk to the crowds. I get arrested by Julian Bell from the Counter-Terrorism Directorate. There's people fighting that they just break it up. So you go. And I get arrested for hate speech. For hate. I'm not charged with it.
What words did they say were hate?
Well, I tell you, I get a big crowd. I used to get a really big crowd. And, I'd say that, the power of the insurance companies, the power of Kroll, all because my wife had an affair. And there was a guy at the back who kept saying, "What was this bloke's name?" And I thought, no one ever asked that. I've been doing it every Sunday. I'm used to the regular questions. People are being, how did it all start? What's going on here? Well, but what's this bloke? And this bloke is not the key. It's the security company that's the key. They've got the power with the police, not this guy. And obviously, I wouldn't answer. And they just said that I was harassing this guy, even though I don't mention his name. I don't mention his name now. There's no limitations on it. I can say his name, can plaster it all over the internet. It's not about him. This is about the police, who I, up until very recently, sort of thought were good. I thought they were all good, and they're, catching there's the odd rotten apple in any organisation. No, there's not There's not. It's worse. Did
you have to take the videos down of you going to police people's houses?
Sorry.
Did you have to take those videos down? The videos you took at the police's houses?
No, I didn't. So I refused to take them down. Are they still
available?
No, they're not. No. I took them down. I took them down for personal reasons. I'll tell you why I took them down. Because this took over my life. And I was so angry at the injustice that the police could do all of this and get away with it, and it was all acceptable. And I had a conversation with, I had a beer with a guy called Michael Gillard, Sunday Times reporter, a real expert on police corruption. And he said, "You never win, And I said, "But I won my case. He said, "Look, you're angry now telling me. You never win." And even though I'd won, I thought about it. I thought it's true. So I've got to let go. Letting go was just letting some of those things go. Does that make sense? It made sense to me.
It's a massive machine, and you're just one person, and the machine will always be there, and it's got all the money in the world.
Yeah, well, absolutely.
It's a losing...
Well, we're going to get to the crack cocaine bit soon. So yeah, you asked me about the most serious things for being arrested. So, driving a stolen car, which was mine, which is just nonsense. Hate speech at Speaker's Corner, which obviously I wasn't charged with. Multiple arrests for saying I'd take my website down and not taking it down. I mean, they never charged me. They just arrest me, and then I'd say I'd take it down again. And they go, "Oh, you didn't take it down. We're going to charge you again." But nothing ever happened. And my barrister, Michael Wold, this time I've got a barrister. So this time I'm going to court. I've got a barrister, Michael Woldkind QC. I can't tell you. He's on his website. It says Britain's best criminal defence barrister. That man walks on water. He's absolutely brilliant. Well, we'll get to the courtroom and what happened with the police in the courtroom. But he he believed me. So, from day one, when I sat down and explained everything that had happened, he always believed me. I always felt that he believed what I was saying. I just felt it. I mean, he'd ask me some difficult questions occasionally. And there's one occasion where I actually know that he didn't believe me. And I'll tell you what that was. So and if I showed you the evidence against me and said, Shaun, I didn't do this. Honestly, Shaun, you wouldn't believe me. You really wouldn't believe me. And I'll tell you what they did was very, very clever. So my trial is in June 2011. So in March 2011, I get a call from one of the junior barristers, Jonas. He rings me up and says, Ian, we need to see you urgent. I said, how urgent? He said, can you come in now today? So I said, what is it? He said, we'll discuss it with you. He didn't tell me what it was. We'll discuss it when you go. So straight down to the barrister's chambers. And we're down in the reception and he shows me 3 witness statements and they nail me to a wall. Trust me, it's not like there's no wiggle room, right? 3 of this chap, the chap who's involved in the affair, 3 of his neighbours all say that I knocked on their doors, I harassed them, I was bullish and harassing them, and they described me to a T. So when you read it, the description is to a T, me, the actual build, my hair, everything about me. One of them, Theo Chan, actually says that my behaviour was so concerning. He says I parked my black Range Rover. He describes where I parked it, and I made a note of the registration. So you've got 3 people say that I knocked on all of their doors, harassed them, was abusive. They've got my registration of my car. So I looked at this and I just said to Jonas, I've never done this. And he said, well, why would 3 of Mr. So-and-so's neighbours lie? I said, they wouldn't. I don't believe they would. I don't. Would you get 3 of your neighbours to lie for you? Of course not. So he said, well, how do you explain it? And I said, I can't. I really can't explain it. And he said, well, this isn't good. Listen, and this is the most compelling evidence against me, trust me. And the police didn't even arrest me and say, right, what did you do, blah, blah, blah. They just sent it over to the barrister's chamber. The CPS sent it over. So we then go upstairs to the conference room. And Michael said, Michael Wolkine said, have you read the statements? And I said, yeah. He said, this is trouble. And I said, Michael, I don't expect you to believe me. And I could tell that he didn't. I said, I haven't done it. I haven't got anybody else to do it. This is just a lie. And he's going, so 3 neighbours of Mr. So-and-so would lie. And I went, no, I don't believe they would. And he said, can you explain it? I said, no. And he said, right, okay, let's. So the witness statements were taken in March and they go back to January 2011. So where were you? And we're sat in this table and there's a speakerphone in the middle of the table. It's a round table. And he says, where were you on such and such? I said, well, off the top of my head, I don't know. We use Commusoft in my office. I can call the office. So beep, 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 on speakerphone, Samantha answers. In my office, Sam, where was I on such and such a date? Hang on. You were at Mike Varney's physiotherapy clinic in Hartford. I went, you're joking. So she said, yeah. So thanks. So Mike Wolkine says to me, will they vouch for that? So we'll ring them up. So I've got my mobile phone. So I type in. So I ring up Mike Varney's physiotherapy clinic in Hartford. And they answer, and I said, "Oh, it's Ian Puddick here," and I had to lie. And I said, "I need can you just confirm that I was there on such and such a day?" And he went, "Yeah, you were here 11 o'clock in the morning." So we've got sorry, I keep hitting the microphone. We've got 3 witnesses down in Billingshurst in Sussex that put me there between 11 and 11:30, and I've got a physiotherapist that puts me in Hartford, it's like 100 miles away, north of it. So something's wrong. So the physiotherapists say that, yeah, we confirm you saw Nikki, you paid on your credit card. And I said, oh, is it possible to get a letter? And they said, why? What do I say? I said, oh, I've got a sort of speeding ticket somewhere else. And, I'm sure I was with you at that time. So yeah, we'll give you a letter. It's 20 quid. So I gave him my credit card details. An hour later, headed paper, a letter comes through confirming I was there and that time. I saw Nikki, I paid on my credit card, copy of the stump. Done. So Michael Wolkine says, maybe they got the wrong day.
I was going to say that.
Maybe they got the wrong day.
Yeah, change the date.
So maybe you were there the day before, the day after, 2 days before, 2 days. Maybe it's just the date that's wrong. So so I had a really senior police officer helping me. So I said to Michael, look, can I ring so and so? He will tell her. So I put him on speakerphone. First of all, I texted him and said, look, is it okay to call you? I'm with Michael Woldkind. I'm in a load of trouble. Can we call you? So he said, yeah. So we called him, and he's now on speakerphone. So and Michael Woldkind's saying to her, okay, what can the police do? You know, how do they? What do they? You know, what are their procedures for this, that, and the other? And so he says to me, Ian, if you have done this, this is where you get busted. If it's the wrong date or something. He said that ask the police to do a BOF2 check. Now I don't know if that's the correct name, if it's a nickname. It's what they call it in the police. It's what their nickname for it or whatever. But a BOF2 check is an ANPR check, and they use satellite technology, and they can check your registration. So the policeman said, if you have done this, this is where you're going to get busted. And I said, I really haven't. So Michael Woldkind said, look, we can say to the CPS, right, we want an ANPR check a week before this date and a week after that date to see if I'd been there. So they come back, and they come back to us at the later date with some photographs of my car, but all in nothing down there. It's all in Hertfordshire. And on the day, it was going up the A10. So I certainly wasn't there. And I wasn't there the week before or the week after. So while we're in this conference, Michael Woldkind picks up the statements, which had only come through like an hour before. And he notices that they're not signed by the people, the neighbours, and they're not signed by the police officer. So Jonas contacts the CPS and says, can you confirm that the witness statements were taken by either Sussex Police or City of London Police? Get a message back from the CPS. No, about an hour later, I'm there for 5 hours in this room, and they come back and say, no one knows who took the statements. No one statements. So Michael Woldkind writes back to them and says that we will witness summons those 3 people so we can cross-examine them in court. They're never called. That evidence against me is dropped. However, when you go to court, as you probably know, you've got the unused material. So the CPS say, well, we've got all this information, we're not going to use it, you can see it, and that never came through in one lump. It was just drip thread to us. So a week later, we get an internal email from City of London Police, from Colin Dawson, and in there he states that he had to take some forms. Doesn't say what the forms are. He had to take some forms over. This is in January, so the date of his email ties up 2 days before the witness statements are made by the neighbours. And it says that Colin Dawson, Sergeant Colin Dawson, City of London Police Counter-Terrorism, went over to Kroll's offices, handed over some forms to Aruna De Silva, who works for Kroll. Now, did Kroll go and take the witness statements? Did Kroll invent the witness statements? We don't know, but it was all dropped against me. So I was so angry again that they were trying to invent.
There should be a crime, shouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, wait till we get to the crack cocaine. I just couldn't believe it. So I said to Michael Woldkind, they've dropped all this against me. I'm going to bring this up in court. And Michael said, look, you don't have to. It's all been dropped. It's just. And I said, no, I'm going to tell the judge. I'm going to tell the magistrates, just to illustrate the lengths they were going to try and get me. They were just trying so hard. And I did at my actual trial. So we actually get to my trial. Before my trial, and 6 months before my trial, all of my suppliers, my business suppliers for Leakbusters, were contacted anonymously and told they were in financial trouble and about to go bust. So I had to get a letter from So who did that? Well, it wasn't me. It wasn't the police. I got a call. So my company accountant wrote a letter to every single supplier and just said that there's been this anonymous rumour, blah, blah, blah. We are confirming we're trading solvently. You're welcome to come in, anytime unannounced. If you say, if I owe you 50 grand, I'm about to go bust. That's your 50 grand. So you're welcome to come in and check my accounts unannounced anytime you want. There's an open door. And obviously I've been trading for years. So my suppliers know, a few of them made phone calls and I just said it's complete nonsense. Jealous competitors, but I knew it was all to do with this. I got a phone call, an anonymous phone call, telling me that I had effed with the wrong people, and they had deep pockets, and they were going to eff me like I'd never been effed before. And I can still remember when I was driving on the North Circular, where that call came through from a withheld number, and in the statement from the managing director of Kroll, a guy called Benedict Hamilton, he in his statement actually says, I bought a clean phone, i.e., a pay-as-you-go phone with £5 credit on there. And he says in there that he called me and warned Mr. Puddick that we had deep pockets. So when I had that threat, saying they were going to F me, it was actually the managing director of, they've got nothing better to do. He actually admitted that in his police statement. It's just absolutely nuts. So there was this very dark operation against me. So we get to my trial, and without boring you for the whole details of the trial, they brought a couple of key aspects, and then I'll get to the crack cocaine. They got a guy who was the managing director of Monster Domain, Matt Mansell. Now, he's not an IT expert. He's the managing director of Monster Domain, where I bought the domain name. And he'd done this fairly detailed report suggesting that, I'm not an IT expert, but if you read the report, you would have said that I was up to something. He was saying it's possible to do this, and it's possible to do this, and you can do that, and you can hide your IP address in this by doing that, and all this kind of stuff. And it created the illusion that I was definitely, my website was bought by me on stolen credit, on this dodgy credit card. It was registered to me at my home address. I'd done nothing to hide that. So it was all traceable back to me. But he insinuated that I was doing all this dodgy stuff with it. And we got in a guy called Ron Cuffley, who is ex-police intelligence, army intelligence. And he literally did a very detailed report, but his summary was one A4 page. So Matt Mansell gets up and for 3 hours goes into technical detail about hiding stuff in clouds and all sorts of stuff. And at the end of it all, Michael Wolkine then gets to cross-examine and says, have you read our expert report? And he went, no. So it's adjourned for half an hour while he just reads the summary, which is an A4 sheet. And he said that he's given the opportunity. He said, "Do you want to read the whole report, or are you happy with the summary?" He said, "No, I'm happy with the summary." He said, "I've only got a couple of questions for you. Having read our expert report, does anything in your report show that I'd done anything illegal or deliberately tried to hide stuff? And I would like a yes or no." And he went, "No." He went, "No more questions." But 3 hours we had to listen to him suggest that I'd done all this technical stuff. Which
I wonder how much you got paid for that.
Well, I don't know. I would imagine he didn't do it for free. He didn't do it out the kindness of his own heart. The judge said to me, we had a single judge, Elizabeth Roscoe, who was very, very good, and she said to me, and I'm telling her all these experiences of all the things that had happened. And she said to me, "But what made you create the website? Why did you create a website?" And I said, I'm a white, middle-class-ish type guy. I'm not the kind of guy that gets brutalised in custody. It normally happens to young black kids on an estate in South East London that don't get too much sympathy when it happens. If they can do that to me, wipe the CCTV in the station, when the police officers are quizzed, have amnesia. If they can do that to me, they can do it to anyone. I'm not going to let them bully me, and I'm not going to let them get away with it. And she said, "I quite agree. I want those two officers here in an hour." So my case is adjourned, literally there and then. or put on hold for an hour. And these two police officers, Sergeant Dawson and Sergeant Ellis, get a phone call, whatever they're doing, get to Westminster Magistrates Court now. So they turn up. So Colin Dawson first comes in, and my barrister's firing questions at him. He's still got amnesia. I can't remember what happened in that room. He remembers. He was there. He watched me. He saw me cry. He knows exactly what Ellis did. So, but he just, amnesia. I cannot remember. Due to the passing of time, I cannot recall, and walks out. Just couldn't answer a single question. Sergeant Ellis comes in. He's very cocky. And my barrister starts asking him. So, due to the passing time, and he's very respectful, due to the passing of time, I cannot recollect. I do apologise to the court. So he said, so you called Mr. Puddick in for an interview for nothing. He said, look, we've got nothing to say to you. Come in for an interview. Come into this little room. We don't know what we're going to say to you. We don't know why we're here. Is that normal, Mr. Sergeant Ellis? And he said, no, we always have a reason. He said, so what was the reason, Mr. Puddick? And he said, due to the passing of time. And he kept using the passing of time. And my barrister kept hitting him. And eventually, he started to wear down and started to engage.
Did he?
Yeah.
What did he say?
This is where we get to the crack cocaine. So he said, he literally had this eureka moment. He said, yeah, I remember why I had to interview Mr. Puddick. And he said, why was that, Sergeant Ellis? He said, because during the search of Mr. Puddick's property, I found large quantities of crack cocaine. so I am behind bars. I'm in behind bars in the dock, right? For a website which, I very proudly created. There's no dispute. I very proudly created that website. And I would do it again if they did any of that nonsense. And I shouted out, you liar. It's lying. It's lying under oath. So the judge told me off and said that if I did that again, I'd be chucked out and taken down to the cells. And I didn't want that. He just lied. So my barrister turned around to me and winked. Sergeant Ellis, it's quite a serious thing to find. Where did you find the crack cocaine? He said, I found it in the kitchen, in the bedroom, and the loft room. And he said, and where was it in the kitchen? He said, well, it was as you walk into the kitchen, it was on the side. And he said, and my barrister said it was in the bedroom and in the loft room. He said, yeah. So it was like a large cachet of crack cocaine. And Sergeant Ellis said, yes. And he said, okay, so talk us through the procedure. So you're in the kitchen, you walk in the kitchen and you find this crack cocaine. Is there any else thing? Yeah, he's there. We found the bags and all the stuff you need to be a drug dealer. He found. And he said, okay, no. So he said, okay. And he said, so you've got the other officers on the search team. He said, you discussed it with the other officers. Obviously, look, we found what we think is some Class A drugs there. He said, no, I didn't mention it to the other officers. He said, but you made a little note in your notepad. It's very basic policing. Found what I believe to be Class A drugs. You made a note in your notepad. No, I didn't. He said, so when you confiscated it, and you did confiscate this, didn't you? And he said, no, I forgot. So he said, I understand you're under a lot of pressure. This Operation Bohan, you spent millions of pounds. Really mocked him. He spent millions of pounds. You're under pressure. You need an arrest. He said, so let's move through to the bedroom. Where was it in the bedroom? He said, it was all on the top of the fireplace. And he said, and what else did you find? He described in detail all of the paraphernalia. So he said, and you've discussed it with the other officers. Oh, no, I forgot to. You made a little notepad. You confiscated it. He said, no, I forgot. And he said, and what about the loft? So whereabouts in the loft? And they said, let me stop you. You found it in the loft. You forgot to tell the other officers. You forgot to make a note, and you forgot to confiscate it. Am I right? Yes, I'd like a yes or no. And he said, no. He said, so you just left it there. He said, did you confiscate anything from Mr. Puddick's property? And he said, yeah, we took his mobile phone, his digital camera, Sony digital camera, his iPad, and his laptop. He said, and what did you do with that? He said, we sent it off for forensics analysis. And my barrister said, so, when you forensically analyse these things, it could give you some intelligence on Mr. Puddick, who he's meeting, where he's going, the kind of contact he's got. Could give you some great intelligence on allegations of being involved in criminality. He said, I'd like a yes or no. Did you find anything on there that would give you any information of criminality? Yes or no? He went, no. He said, so you've left all the crack cocaine in Mr. Puddick's property and you've taken his Sony, he's taken his camera, and he had to say yes. He actually said yes. And I just couldn't believe he really made him look stupid. He really, really made stupid. When Sergeant Ellis was giving evidence, and this is why I brought that picture along.
Yeah, grab it.
There's a bit of detail. I missed out. So this piece of art, it's a piece of art. It's called Snowblind, and it's by Damien.
Might want to put it there.
Yeah, I don't know. Shall I just put it there?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah,
Is that okay? Is that
that one's got it. Yeah,
has that got it? So it's a legitimate piece of art. It's by Damien Hirst, who is well known for cutting up a cow and putting it in formaldehyde, and it's called Snowblind, and it's all about the drugs trade. So cut a very long story short, while Sergeant Ellis was talking about my house and the raid and the search, remember he's had amnesia for all this time, and now he's got absolute clarity, and he describes that picture hanging in my kitchen. I didn't own that. So Sergeant Ellis was only in my house on the very, very first ever raid in August 2009. We jumped through now to my trial in June 2011. I bought this in 2010. So when Sergeant Ellis came in my house, I didn't own it. And he described it in detail. There's a bit of the story I've missed out. In December 2010, so 6 months before my trial, my house is broken into and all my court defence documents are stolen. Obviously, I got a new iPad. I had a box with all my court defence documents with my iPad on it. The thief or thieves took the iPad off and stole all my court defence documents. So was Sergeant Ellis involved in the break into my house to steal my court defence documents? I actually don't believe that at all. Do I think he was involved with the burglars? I don't think that at all. I personally think that Kroll arranged for the break-in because their company, Guy Carpenter, their sister company, Guy Carpenter, where this chap works, we're going to have all this bad PR coming out, and they just wanted to know the extent of what's going to come out in court, what's going to be said in court, what kind of things am I going to say, what am I aware of? Well, nick his court defence documents, and you've got the whole treasure trove. So I do think that the people at Kroll had obviously spoken to him, because there's no way that he could describe a piece of art that I hadn't even purchased when he was in my house. But it was in there at the time that the burglars raided my house and stole my court defence documents. Does that make sense?
It's insane.
Yes, said if my wife had an affair with Milton, it'd been a lot easier. I could have called the dairy and it'd been over in a day. So yeah, it's just that so the judge found me not guilty. The judge found me not guilty, and I was cleared. I was in the dock. The security guard opened the dock. I couldn't come out because I was crying so much. I was so happy I'd beaten them. I was so happy they'd thrown all this money and done everything they possibly could, and I'd beaten them all. I was so happy.
And was that the end of it?
Pretty much. So we started suing we'd taken out a private criminal prosecution against the police for malfeasance for that Sergeant Ellis. So, is that malfeasance in public office? Is it perjury? Was it conspiracy to avert the course of justice? We threw everything at him because he lied in that box. I mean, the crack cocaine is either still in my house, either I've taken it or I've sold it or given it away. They're the only four possibilities. There's no other possibility. So then other officers came through and made statements. Yeah, we were on the search. Oh, God, we saw the crack. Sorry, Shaun, we thought you'd confiscated it. Oh, sorry, Joe, we thought you'd confiscated it. Oh, sorry, Sarah, we thought you'd confiscated it. It's the Keystone Cops. But this is all about lack of accountability. It's all about the lack of accountability. And at that time, do you remember the Plebgate? It was national news for 6 months or whatever. There was a big issue with the Conservative Party, Andrew, his name's just gone. Conservative Party MP, he was a cabinet member, and he's very posh, And the issue was he was coming out of Downing Street and he got into an argument with the police officer, Toby Rowland. And there was an issue. Did he call the policeman a pleb? And it was called Plebgate. It was all the national headlines. He sued the police officer for lying in a private case. I went to the court. I sat there every single day. And the judge found in the policeman's favour, because all the police officers that came in and sang from the same hymn sheet, the judge, in his summing up, said he didn't believe that the police would create the pantomime and theatre. I think they were his exact words. In other words, they all would lie, and they do. They do. This one police officer got up in the Plebgate trial and stood up and said, "Yeah, I was standing there. I was between 4 and 7 feet away from Andrew Mitchell MP and PC Toby Rowland. I heard him call him a pleb, blah, 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 blah." Ron Cuffley, who's involved in my case, I put him in touch with Andrew Mitchell. He got involved and did some forensic investigation. And when they showed you the actual CCTV on the night, he was like 70 feet away at the other end and then did some acoustics, and it was like 11 o'clock at night or whatever, and they just couldn't. So they put it all to him after he'd made that statement, and he said, "I apologise to the court. My recollection is inaccurate, and I retract my and I apologise to the court." But he'd been very happy to have stood by it if that hadn't have come on and said, "Yeah, he definitely did it. I saw him. I was there. I was a few feet away." They just lie. They just lie and lie and lie.
So earlier on, you said in your campaigning you learned of cases that were way worse than yours. Have you got any examples?
Yeah, absolutely. The worst for me personally is Daniel Morgan. Are you aware of the Daniel Morgan case? Daniel Morgan was a independent journalist back in the 80s. He was exposing big, when we talk about police corruption, I'm talking about me and you are mates. We've grown up together. I'm a police officer. I stop you for speeding, and it's you, Shaun. I say, "Come on, Shaun, don't do it again. Let you off," and I don't charge. I'm talking about that kind of thing. I'm talking about real corruption, bribes, backhanders, turning the other way, involved in criminality. So he was going to expose unprecedented police corruption with the police involved with News of the World. So Daniel Morgan turns up, goes to the police with it, and goes quite high up. He says, "I don't want to speak to." He walks into the police. "I don't want to speak to the bobby. I want to speak to a sergeant or whatever." And he manages to speak to somebody quite high up. It's arranged for him to meet in a pub. And Daniel Morgan never leaves the pub. He's found killed in the car park with an axe in the head. Nobody dies with an axe in the head. You get stabbed, you get shot. No one dies with an axe in the head. So there were 4 police investigations into police misconduct or corruption involving the Daniel Morgan case, and they all cleared the police. Shock horror. To be fair to Theresa May, to her credit, 5 years ago, she launched an independent judge-led one, and they found that all 4 police investigations were hampered with police corruption. Shock horror. But it's always too late. And his brother Alistair, who I know well, has campaigned for this, campaigned for some justice. And it has slowly, it came out during the Leveson report. But we're talking about people's lives. We've got a poor chap that's dead. His family's lives are in tatters. That's real police corruption. Real police corruption.
Oh my goodness.
Mine's a walk in the park compared to that. I haven't lost anybody.
So I don't know when it was, about a year or so ago, people started saying to me, "This guy called Brian Harvey's making videos about you."
Rightly so.
And I watched the videos, and this guy just ranting about me.
Yeah.
Effing Shaun Attwood, effing John Wedger, effing Ian Puddick, effing... Who's the other guy he's got it in for?
There's loads. Shaun, yourself.
Bill something.
Bill Maloney.
Bill Maloney.
Effing
Bill Maloney this, effing... Then he started saying that I was working for the New World Order.
Which is true.
And so I thought, all right, who's this guy? I'm going to Google him. I saw that he was in a famous band.
Yeah, huge.
E17.
Yeah, massive.
And he'd run over himself or something.
Yeah, I believe so.
It looks really sad. I thought, having lived with people who suffered, seeing the suffering of people with addiction issues and mental health issues, I thought this is really sad.
It's very sad. Because he's talented. He's really talented.
Yeah.
He's very talented.
But why the hell is
he... If he put his energy into... And I had a conversation with him back in, I think it was end of January this year or beginning of February. I had a conversation with him because he accuses me of all sorts of nonsense. I said to him that, I believe, because he makes videos about him being hacked by News of the World, and from what he shows, I think he probably was. But unfortunately, the conspiracy to hack him 10 years ago, or whenever it was, by News of the World, now involves the Queen, me, you, and all sorts of nonsense. Whereas if he just concentrated on maybe if he feels really strongly about that, and he does, and understandably so, do something about that and just focus on getting that right, and also put some energy into his music. He always talks about his music career, and he's very talented. So do it. Don't talk about it. Do it.
So why did he draw you into his web?
Well, Bill Maloney, from my campaigning days back then, I got introduced to Bill Maloney, and Bill's how can I describe him? Marmite figure. You either love him or you hate him. I love him. I think he's great. I won't say anything bad about him. He has very unorthodox methods. He's very direct. He's really passionate. And do you know what? If you understand his life and what happened to him in care, and I'm not going to talk about that. Bill wants to talk about that. That's for Bill to talk about. If you look at what happened to him as a young boy in care, I don't bloody blame him. I'll be furious. What's happened to him. So he's really, really passionate about that. Some people don't like it because he's really, he shouts, he screams, he gets passionate. He's a good friend of John Wedger's. So Bill said to me in 2014, would I buy him a Ninja recorder because they were going to do this interview with someone. So I went on eBay, bought one for a couple £100, and I gave it to Bill. Now that Ninja recorder ended up being given to Brian Harvey. So because of that, I'm involved in the conspiracy. And he makes videos saying, Ian Puddick bought me a Ninja. I've never met him. I've never met Brian Harvey.
And Bill
asked me for I bought it for Bill. Bill's my mate.
What harm did the Ninja cause Brian to
it's
be sold?
It just involves me in the conspiracy. And then he says they went up and they did this and Puddick funded it. Well, that's just a lie. He just tells lies. So I'm involved. So, did Bill ask me to buy him a Ninja recorder and did I do it? The answer is yes. And that's it. And then all the rest he just tells lies.
Oh my goodness!
But he's not well, is he? He's not well. He's not well.
I wish him all the best. It's sad to see people suffering like that. Yeah, and you've brought along a gift for my parents.
I have. So these are tonics. Is it still filming?
Yeah. It doesn't stop.
Oh right, okay. So. I've in my plumbing in my leak detection office, and I'm really not kidding. We have a mini gin distillery, and it's very, very small. And it's a really good reason for making gin, not because we wanted to make gin. When I bought it's all on our website. You can see all the pictures. When I bought back in 2013, I bought an old bakery, which was just a wreck. It literally was just a wreck. And I bought it. I got 2 mortgages out on it. And I converted it from an old wreck into a lovely office. And we kept all the original features, all the old, we put wrought iron back. It's really nice. It's really cool. It's a nice space. All the bricks, we cleaned all the bricks up and repointed them in an old-fashioned style. So it's got loads and loads of character. When we were doing all the renovation or building works, there were 2 giant twin ovens, obviously from the bakery, with a giant chimney, trees growing up them. I mean, the top of the chimney you could push over. It was so dangerous. So I demolished it all, took it all down. I then got sued by a neighbour who said, hey, that's my chimney. And we got into this really stupid dispute, and it went to court. So while the lawyers were looking at the history of the place before we went to court, saying, was it Shaun's chimney? Was it my chimney? How did this all go wrong? While the lawyers were looking at the history, the lawyers found out that the original bakers over 100 years ago made illegal gin there. I tracked down the family descendants and the descendants of the little mews. We're in this tiny little mews. The photographs are all on my website. BBC News, ITV News, Channel 4 followed the story. And I tracked down the original family descendants and I got the original gin recipe. There's only 4 botanicals. I know nothing about gin, by the way. Most gins have a minimum of 12 ingredients, 10 to 12 botanicals. This only has the original 4. They're very simple because obviously over 100 years ago, there wouldn't be that much around. So the ingredients would be simple. We built a miniature gin distillery, watched some YouTube videos, and we've resurrected the gin. We supply Buckingham Palace. We supply Harrods, Fortnum and Masons. Most people have never heard of it because it's just such a small gin. We serve it at the Foreign Office. We did an event on Whitehall last night for the Ministry of Defence where we launched our new whiskey, London whiskey. So we're getting it into some really prestigious places.
Imagine Prince Andrew's hammering it right now.
No comment, I plead the fifth. So we get it into some prestigious places purely because it's part of London history. So it's a bit of fun, and obviously it's a gift. I know you don't drink, but it's a gift for your mum and dad.
Oh, I really appreciate that, Ian. So for people watching this then, I'm going to put in the description box your links. You've got your YouTube channel, you've got your Twitter, Facebook,
Ian Puddick.
Yeah.
I'm pretty rubbish. I don't really like Facebook. I do sort of use it sometimes, but
and if what's your preferred method of people contacting you?
Twitter. I love it.
Twitter.
I love Twitter.
Because you've got over 100,000 followers on Twitter, haven't you?
No, it's down to about 50 or 60 now.
Okay.
1,000, but it used to be, it was 120, 30,000 about 10 years ago. At the height of because I was I'd video my arrests at Speaker's Corner. And anyone that knows me, I'm not a tough guy, I'm not violent, I don't shout and swear. And they were just doing everything, and it was an injustice. It was an injustice, and I just publicised it. Really,
there's not many people who go and film at the police's house. Is that that's
and the commissioner,
unusual.
Adrian Lepard's. That was the best one. That was the best one.
Don't do it. Don't do it if you're watching this. So, and you have a website as well, did you say?
So for the gin, it's oldbakerygin.com.
Okay.
But the real website is policeexpenses.co.uk. Hasn't had many updates because nothing's really happened since I won my case.
And let's keep it that way.
Yeah, that's true.
So if you enjoyed this podcast, please let us know in the comments below the video. Huge thank you to all new subscribers. Subscription logos in the bottom right hand corner. Thank you to people who've donated as well. All the links in the description box, as are the links to our socials and all of our other stuff. All right, give me a hug, big man, then.
Social distancing and all that.
Yeah. Thanks, well done.
You're very welcome.
Yeah.